Welcome to Meet the Author, where you can join in on insightful conversations with best-selling and award-winning indie published authors. Your hosts today are Rob and Joan, who themselves are indie published authors, book publicists, and paranormal investigators with Tampa Bay Spirits, based in Tampa Bay, Florida. Thanks for dropping by. And now, on with the show.
Hi, I'm Rob.
And I'm Joan. We're so glad that you decided to join us tonight, whether you're watching us live tonight, Wednesday, Eastern Time at 7, or if you're listening to a podcast later on, or even if you are watching live again on our website or listening. We're really glad that you decided to join the audience.
We're just flat out glad you're here.
Always.
Right. Right. So what's new with you? Anything?
No.
Oh, okay. All right. Busy writing.
What could you not know about me? So let's get on with the show.
On with the show, folks.
Move
Okay.
along.
Want to remind everybody tomorrow night at 9 o'clock, WDJYFM.com. That's 99.1 FM radio in Atlanta. Our show will be airing with Wendy Scott from New Zealand. Then Saturday, everybody tune in at 5:30 p.m. right here where you're watching right now for an episode rewind of Michelle Hansen. And then next Wednesday at 7 o'clock right here on Meet the Author, we're going to have Laura Vasica, and I think it's Vasica. Time travel. She has a time travel series. It's based in Scotland, I believe. And she's also a poet, musician, and a writer. Should be an interesting show. Then next Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Right here where you're watching this right now, Haunted Campfire Tales will be presenting. That podcast will be about romantic hauntings and leap year legends. Should be interesting. And then next Thursday evening, also on the radio station, Doug Gardam's episode will be playing. That's on the 29th at 9 o'clock. That's WDJY.com, WDJYFM.com.
Mm-hmm. All right. So we already have two comments, and George Desmukes is very funny. He says, "Here come the judge, here come the judge, and here come George, Nadine, and our two four-legged children to watch." Welcome, George.
Welcome, George.
Marjorie Deering, another Wednesday. Hello again. Hello,
It
Marjorie.
is another Wednesday, that's for sure.
Joe Conjo.
Hi,
Hi,
Joe.
Rob and Joan. Hi, Joe. We're glad that you're here. You guys, I have to read this. Oh,
wait.
Excuse me. Paul Hollis says,
Hey, Paul.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Paul. Thanks for tuning in.
Before you talk about Steve,
Okay.
because we'll bring him in right after, I
Yes.
wanted to let everybody see what came in the mail today from Peter Crowley. He sent us That Night and Other Stories to enjoy. He was on a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And also
You remember him.
his book of poetry called Empire's End. And we're looking forward to reading those. And thank you very much, Peter, for sending those in to us.
Okay. Now I'm going to read. All right.
Okay.
Stephen McGuire. I'm just going to give you the highlights of his career because his resume is so impressive. All right. He retired in 2008 as the chief judge of the Federal Trade Commission. Okay. He was an attorney and federal judge in Washington, D.C. for 30 years. He received the FTC Distinguished Service Award and was honored by President George W. Bush for his service to the nation's judiciary. He has 2 certifications from Harvard, one from John F. Kennedy School of Government and the other from Harvard Law School. That is not easy, people. And also he's traveled to over 65 foreign countries, including 10 communist countries. He had a memorable trip to Cuba where his letter about the culture and lifestyle of Havana were published by Cigar Aficionado magazine. He's been to Africa, India, Vietnam, and Japan. In July 2019, he and his wife Doris taught English to high school students in the Fujian, and I probably butchered that, province of China. That's
pretty cool.
That's amazing.
Way cool.
Anyway, let's,
Chris
without
Chrisman
further ado.
says, "Hi everyone, I'm late." Hi Chris, that's okay. You're not penalized for being late. But now we're going to introduce Steve McGuire. Come on in, Steve.
Hi, Steve.
Yeah, hi guys. How you doing tonight?
Good. Welcome.
And let me also say hi to George.
George is always funny. He's a retired Hollywood script writer. He worked with the Duke, John Wayne. He was his personal assistant for 8 years, I think. When he knows his way around Hollywood. And he's funny. Oh, and he's now an author. Actually, yeah.
And a good friend.
And a really
Indeed.
good friend. So, Steve, why don't you tell us about the kind of books you write and why you decided to write them?
Well, I didn't so much decide, to write. I have known since I was probably 13 years old that I had the ability, to write. I had a freshman high school English teacher who I credit for giving me a really outstanding foundation in English grammar. And I think that contributed a great deal. And I think one other little thing, when I was a kid, I had a bit of a stammer, so I couldn't always say what I wanted to say, but I found when I put a pen to paper, I could say anything. And I knew early on that I had the gift to write. So it served me quite well throughout my educational career and then my legal career. And I think before I retired, I got the idea of writing novels that pertain to to that thing that I had the most experience in, and that was politics in Washington, D.C. So all 3 of my books are political thrillers that take place in Washington. And the sub-story of all 3 of them is how power is exercised behind closed doors in Washington. So for your viewers and audience that might have watched the TV show House of Cards with Kevin Spacey, you know that they portray Washington politics in a very jaded fashion, and that's pretty much how I portray it. My books are very nonpartisan. We just talk about politics and politicians. So the same rules apply to all of them. So that's sort of the underlying, viewpoint that we take in these 3 books that I've authored to date.
Well, yeah, if anybody would know what the Washington scene is about, that would be you. You spent all of your career there.
Right, I did, and I had a great time in Washington. My wife, Doris, was a special agent, and now she's my agent for my books and marketing. But she's still special to me.
That's what I was going to say.
She's still a special
She
agent.
still has a title. That's for
And
sure.
we've met Doris, and believe me, she knows what she's doing. And I think she's a special agent also.
You're in good
That's
hands.
right.
Yes, she's a very intelligent woman, and I like her. I see why you think she's special.
Well, I always tell my audiences when I make these presentations that she carried a Glock pistol for 15 years. So I learned early on that whenever she's around, I can't get too far out of line.
There you go. You need to stay right in line, right?
As long as she no longer has a license to kill, you're probably okay. I'm not saying she ever did have a license to kill, by the way. I didn't mean that at all. Let's bring up the cover of your first book, Prior Restraint. Would you like to tell us a little bit about Prior Restraint?
Yeah, sure. Prior Restraint, as you just said, was my first novel, and it's essentially about terrorism and the media. And I think I got the idea after the events of, I think, 9, then 11, and I asked myself, what would terror look like if it came to our country? And I thought about when there's a coup in South America, the first thing that the rebels do is seize control of the TV and the radio channels so they can get out their message to the public. So Prior Restraint pretty much starts out with some prominent members of the nation's media who are they brutally murdered in the streets of Washington, D.C. and I think Manhattan, seemingly by foreign terrorists. So virtually overnight, the country's leading publications and TV broadcasts just are in a hysterical mode because they're scared to death that if they publish or broadcast anything that the so-called terrorists don't approve of, that they could be the target after the other two. So as I say, seemingly overnight, there's a wave of censorship that takes place throughout the media and the airwaves. So behind the scenes of this is a corrupt U.S. senator who chairs the Senate Homeland and Security Committee, which is charged with investigating these murders. But he is intoxicated by ambition and greed, and he uses the ensuing chaos from these murders to advance his own then corrupt agenda. And I guess you could say the protagonist of the book and the story is a young female then reporter who's charged by her newspaper in Washington with investigating these events. And she soon starts to see things that no one else sees. And as she gets closer to the truth, it puts her own life in grave danger. So, Prior Restraint is a chilling story about the restraint on free speech and fear, greed, and power that goes with the attempt to shut down free speech. And it sort of blurs the border between fiction and the reality of what's going on in our world than today. So it's something that has gained a lot of traction. My wife has, over the last 18 months, has scheduled me to speak at over 60 conferences, and We've been on 20 plus podcasts and either radio shows. So people soon, when I'm done talking about the books, the conversation oftentimes soon turns to the events that are going on today in Washington. But as I said to you off the air previously, all three of my books, the sub-story is about how power is exercised in Washington and the greed that goes with that power.
George Desmukes had a comment. He said, is there any such thing as a politician in Washington who isn't corrupt?
Well, I don't want to make any blanket statements, but, just to get to Washington requires a certain degree of compromise. So I always get a chuckle when I hear first-time candidates for Congress speak at a rally of their supporters, and they'll say something like, it's when I get to Washington, I'm going to tell the speaker that the people of South Florida aren't going to put up with, more taxation or any issue you want to insert. And nothing could be further from the truth. As a first-time congressman, you don't even have the right to speak on the floor of the House without the speaker's approval. So in order to gain that, you've got to play ball not only with the party itself, but you've got to be active in fundraising for the party. So you're already compromised before you ever open your mouth. So the whole nature of politics, I'm not going to call it totally corrupt, but it's a compromising profession. Very few people are ever go up to Washington with the freedom to do and act and speak according to their conscience. And that's just the reality of the situation.
And that's just the truth.
Yeah.
DJ McCool says, I'm glad to be here tonight. Good topics. And Marjorie Deering says, with all you do, which is incredible, how do you find time to write?
Well, I am then retired these days, so I have a little more time.
Speaking engagements.
With all those
speaking engagements.
Well, yeah. Like I said, my wife keeps me busy. I sometimes think I was better off still working.
There you go.
So no, we enjoy it very much, and she's typically goes with me to these engagements, and so I owe her all the credit for putting these things together. But we're a team, and we always have been. And but I find the time to write on my schedule, and when I come up with a new topic to write about, I get pretty much absorbed in it, and it takes about 5 months of doing the research and the writing. And I joke that when I'm really involved in the writing process, I lock myself in my office and I don't even want to take the dogs out for a walk. So, but it's something I've learned to enjoy. And the hardest part is coming up with a storyline that is then unique. If you've read James Patterson, he's written 25, 30 novels, and he's obviously been highly successful. But if you've read 2 or 3 of his books, you've pretty much read them all, because they tend to be rather than formalistic. I like to make my storylines unique. My second book, entitled Fractured Power, its underlying story, I don't think has ever been done before. So that's what gives me the most interest, is creating a storyline that people are going to sit back and go, wow. And then once I come up with that, then the actual writing and creating of the characters it comes in pretty easy.
Joe Conjal says, hi, Steve. Do you outline your books ahead of time, or do you take the story idea and run with it, discovering where it goes as you write?
Well, that's a great question, and I've been asked that many times, Joe. And my first book, I did not outline it. It's my first outing, so to speak, and I just wrote it. But then on my second one and my third book, and the more you get into this, the more you learn. So I have taken to outlining every chapter, and all I need is a brief sentence to outline each chapter, and then having that outline in front of me keeps me on point, so to speak. But again, James Patterson, I saw him in a video say that he never starts a book unless he knows how it's going to end. And I'm not quite like that. I have an idea how I want the storyline to go, but my greatest satisfaction is creating really unique characters, and characters that I go so far deep in who they really are that the reader can't help but become absorbed in the characters. And in my mind, I have the fantasy that the characters carry the storyline. And it's like I'm just in the same room with them, and I'm just observing how they think and how they react to the situation that's presented to them. Now, I know that's not how it works, but that's the fantasy that I kind of follow, and I get great joy out of watching my characters grow during the book. And I oftentimes take 3 or 4 of the central characters in the stories back to their childhoods to show the reader not only who they are, but why they are the way they are. And I think it adds a real depth. And I think it comes through as the characters evolve.
Okay. That's fascinating, and I agree with you 100%. We'll kind of circle right back as soon as we hear from our sponsors. So hang on, everybody.
We'll
don't
come
go
back
away.
to that same subject, so
Yes.
don't go away.
Many secrets are hidden within the darkness of the jungle. Now comes part 4 in the Jaguar series by retired Hollywood scriptwriter George Dismukes. In this saga, Brandon, Andrea, and Naja, the Black Jaguar, go deep into the Mato Grosso jungle on a mission to rescue 2 kidnapped children. During their journey, they encounter many dangers, including Yanomami Indians, bent on revenge for the murder of one of their warriors.
Return of the Jaguar is book 4 in the Jaguar series, starting with 2 faces of the Jaguar, the Lost City, and the Jaguar's Quest. All 4 are available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and other bookseller websites worldwide. Return of the Jaguar is a must-read.
It's 1919, and Eric Laska returns from the war in Europe. 2 new enemies await him in the small coal mining town he calls home. One is a threat to his relationship with Rebecca, the love of his life. The other, a bloodthirsty beast, is stalking the mining town residents. The townspeople suspect Eric of one of the killings. An old man and Rebecca's 11-year-old sister have seen the beast, but only Eric believes their story. To protect the town and clear his name, he's forced to prove the werewolf exists. Available on Amazon. The Horror Within by Marjorie Swift Doring.
The clock is ticking. Can Gracie uncover the truth?
Philip Pliant is the wealthy opportunist plastics dealer and CEO of Pliant Industries. He's also a master thief, creating a pervasive threat to the manufacturing infrastructure in the Caribbean islands markets. With the cartel as his stealth client, the naive city leaders have been seduced, enabling the production of more than 3-dimensional building materials.
The expected profits are monstrous.
Is the art group, now led by Gracie and the family heirs, strong enough to win against this predator?
Can JJ's cats act on the root cause analysis in time?
Will Gracie be able to squash Pliant and the cartels?
Gracie never considered their lives would hang in the balance. The clock is ticking. 5, 4, 3.
That's The Enigma Tracer by Breakfield and Berkey for all you who are just listening.
Okay. Joy Shelton York says, sorry, I'm late. Hi, all.
Joy.
She said that quite a while ago, but we've been talking about a lot of things. Here's another question from Joe. So do you believe the characters drive your story versus the plot driving your story?
As I said, that's how I think of it. Obviously, the plot is the plot, and I'm true to the storyline and the outline that I make ahead of time, but I allow the characters tremendous freedom. And as I say, I like to think that the character, I don't have it all ironed out ahead of time. And I do like to think that the characters, as I become more comfortable and understand how the characters' minds work, it lends itself to new variations on how the plot proceeds. So, it's both, but I think that's what makes my books of interest, is that the characters are so alive in these stories.
Exactly. Marjorie Deering says, in prior restraint, was it difficult for you to write for a female protagonist?
That's a great question, and I've never been asked that before. But no, I've been around a lot of strong, independent women in my life, including my wife, and so it wasn't hard to make Jesse, then McCabe, which was the character's name, a strong, intelligent, then dynamic individual. And that's how she comes across. I've been asked by many people to write a sequel just on her. And she would be great fodder for a sequel. She's such a strong character. So,
is she in all three of your books?
No, she just in the first book.
Just the first
one. Restraint.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I mean, again, I take great pride in my characters, and I took great pride in who she became. She was brave. She saw things no one else could see, and she was a great character.
Chris Chrisman said all good characters grow through the story, the book. Yep. And that's true. They do. Why don't we go to his website? And because I can see we're going to be talking a lot about, some really deep things here tonight. So before we forget, I want everybody to know what Stephen's website is. His website is StephenMcGuireAuthor.com. And for those of you who are listening on the podcast, it is StephenMcGuire author.com. Okay, and you can reach Stephen there, and you can actually find his email on there, and you can write to him and ask him questions and all that kind of thing. And I have a question, and actually we didn't even talk about this in the pre-show, but as you're speaking about your different books, I'm wondering, do you have a book ready to come out? Are you working on something now? What?
Well, we just published my third book, which is entitled Secret and Deceit, in October, I think it was. So I'm in sort of a period of time where I've been doing a lot of speaking lately, and I haven't gotten geared up yet or in the mode to start my next one. I probably will pretty soon. And I haven't yet decided definitively what my fourth book's going to be about. I've got a couple of ideas that I'm still toying with. And as I said earlier, coming up with that unique storyline is the hardest part of the whole process. So it'll occur, and hopefully in the next couple months we'll get set to go on number 4.
Well, let us know, and we'll let people know what we're doing. Or you can go to his website, and I'm sure you'll be able to find it there. He'll keep you informed. Now, you did bring this up a little bit, fractured power. You want to tell us a little bit about that book?
Well, fractured power is basically a dark and haunting psychological thriller about the young man named Aiden Fletcher, who's quite brilliant, but also quite disturbed. And he comes from humble origins, but uses his extraordinary ambition and then devious ingenuity to reach the pinnacle of power in Washington, D.C. And it begins as he becomes a prosecuting attorney in Knoxville, Tennessee, and his office investigates the murders of several young females. And as they close in on a suspect, and his arrest and trial becomes the biggest trial that East Tennessee's ever seen. And after the conviction of this individual, then Aiden Fletcher becomes touted to run for Congress, and he does that, and he gets to Washington, and his disturbing past, his dark and haunting past, follows him to Washington. So Fractured Power, again, is a chilling tale about the depths of the human psyche and the race to apprehend a serial killer whose callous disregard for all but himself creates a disturbing puzzle for both law enforcement and his victims alike. And as I said earlier, the storyline behind Fractured Power is unique. No one's ever done a story like this before. And the way I ended that is certainly open for a potential sequel as well.
Oh, good. I mean, I'm sure that your readers will be happy to know that. Joe Conchel has another question. How do you market your books? Do you handle that yourself, or do you have others that help on that?
Well, this is where Doris, and my wife, is chiefly responsible. She's done a magnificent job in marketing. My books are published on Amazon and I think Barnes and Noble, but the actual marketing she does on her own, and she's put in a lot of time contacting venues for me to speak, to get on radio shows. I was just on an international radio show about 2 weeks ago, emanating from Spain. And I've been on all over the country, and credit goes to her. And she uses, she's pretty tenacious on this, as she is on most things. And so it just takes manpower. It takes, she explores the prospects, and maybe she'll send out 20 emails or make 20 phone calls to get 2 connections. But she's done an incredible job, and we're next trying to market these books out in Hollywood, because they all 3 would make tremendous movies. So that's where we're sort of focused. I mean, but we do this for fun. This is not a profit-making enterprise, as most authors know. And so the joy of it all has come from being on shows such as yours, where we've met quite a few interesting people. One of the individuals I met here in Naples, Florida, we become very close, friends. And so it's just getting out and about and having people ask some questions about your books that I find stimulating.
Marjorie Deering has a comment to make. She said, "Could you please clone your wife and arrange to rent her out?"
Well, she wouldn't come cheap. I mean, depends on what you're talking about. But
That's part of the marketing, right?
yeah, that's right. Doris is one of a kind, I will say. And, I'm not sure she could be cloned. If she could, and if they made several thousand of her, look out, world. But she does a great job, and we're a good team.
I think that's what Marjorie meant, that she's doing so much, all the calling and everything.
Right, right.
Marjorie is an author, and she knows how difficult it is to market. That marketing is a full-time job. I think it's something that most authors don't realize when they write their first book.
Well, you know what I always say about especially first-time authors, they have this fantasy. They're very prideful in their work, as they should be, but their fantasy is that if they can just get it published by somebody, by anybody, it's going to be on the New York Times bestseller list. It's going to be made into a major film, and they're going to get wealthy and retire down in Southwest Florida. And nothing could be further from the truth. One of the big publishing agencies did a survey not too long ago, and they concluded that 70% of published books do not turn a profit. So it's not about the money. I think most authors are like me. They get into it for the joy of writing, and some hit a home run and do very well. But like I say, I'm perfectly content getting out and just meeting people, and it gives me something that I enjoy doing while I'm retired. So, but I would say to any author, go out and go for it. Be yourself, and write what you want to write about, and don't hold back.
Yeah, absolutely. But we do all have to market, because besides enjoying writing it, we want people to read the stories that we've written. That's part of the fun, right?
Well, that's the goal. And and I always enjoy when I speak before book clubs that have read one of my books. I'm always interested in the feedback. I always want to hear about what did they think about so-and-so, the character. What did they think about some of the twists and turns that I put in the storylines? And so that feedback is very satisfying and very informative. So that's where I get the most satisfaction, I guess, is talking to people that have actually read in my books.
Yeah, that is really great.
Well, that makes it worthwhile. You enjoyed writing it. You want people to enjoy reading it,
right?
Letting you know that they were on that same trip with you.
That's right. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
And
I think the biggest compliment. I was at a book club event just about a week ago, and the biggest compliment says, "Oh, you've got to write a sequel. I love this character. You've got to write another sequel." So, I mean, that's quite a compliment. So
yeah, that is.
That's because they love that character as much as you did as you were writing that character. That's why we were talking about this earlier. That's why that's important to have your characters be driving the story because
Right.
they're real to you. They'll
Right.
be real to the reader.
And when the characters are driving the story, you could pick up in a whole new book in chapter 1 right where you left off.
Mm-hmm.
And for those that have read the previous book about that character, it would just be an amazing experience to go right in and pick up again where we left off, and this character comes alive again. And for a lot of people, and you've heard people, we've all had the experience in our life reading books where we didn't want the book to end.
Absolutely.
Because we so much enjoyed where it took us.
Absolutely.
And it transported us to places that we didn't want to leave. And matter of fact, I always say that the greatest compliment you can pay any writer is that they take you from the comfort of your lazy boy, wherever you're reading, to the scene of where the action is occurring. And a good example of that is John Krakauer in his book Into Thin Air, about the expedition to the Mount Everest, where a storm killed 7 or 8 of their members. And he was on that expedition, and he put you on the side of that mountain, and your cheeks were freezing when the storm. And so I think that's the best thing you can ever say, is that they were able to take your mind to wherever the scene takes place, and you feel like you're part of it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we need to take our last break. And when we come back, I'd like to talk a little more about secret deceit, because we didn't really get a breakdown on that yet.
Right.
So, everybody stay tuned. We got more to come.
We'll be right back.
It's every parent's worst nightmare. Police officer Madison Jackson awakes to discover her baby kidnapped from her crib. Was it revenge for someone she arrested, or something far more sinister? Madison's estranged husband is incarcerated in Supermax. As the second in command of a deadly Mexican cartel, did he issue the order to abduct their daughter? Bye, Baby, Bye, from author Kelly Marshall. Get your copy today.
Paradise, My Prison. Charlie Flint awakens from a deep sleep and finds himself alone on a tropical beach surrounded by a palm tree jungle and exotic animals. He cannot remember who he is or anything about his life. First, he must find food and build shelter and protect himself from hidden dangers. As his memory gradually returns, it reveals what a very flawed person he is. A man who made too many mistakes, made too many enemies. The implications of the truth are staggering. How did Charlie get there? And will he save himself? Paradise, My Prison is the riveting new suspense thriller from retired Hollywood scriptwriter George Dismukes. Paradise, My Prison by George Dismukes is available in jacketed hardcover, softcover, and all ebook formats worldwide.
Step into the captivating world of skullduggery, where a family of isolated peasant copyholders finds themselves thrust into a web of danger that threatens their very existence. Set against the tumultuous backdrop of the English Reformation, this meticulously researched historical mystery unfolds with a cast of both lovable and despicable characters, immersing you in a fully realized world that's both utterly believable and fantastically unbelievable. Author Paul Rushworth Brown weaves a spellbinding narrative that transports you to Yorkshire, England, in the 16th and 17th centuries, offering an authentic and gritty portrayal of peasant life. The pages come alive with vivid descriptions, crafting an atmosphere that pulls you deeper into a story of crime, murder, and suspense like no other.
Hi, I'm Paul Rushworth Brown, author of Skullduggery, Red Winter Journey, and Demon Courage, just recently released. I hope you enjoy Skullduggery, the second edition. Cheers.
Hello, we're back. Chris Crispin says he was lucky, having worked with authors for several years, moderating and beta reading, so he had no illusions about the marketing side before he wrote his series, or about getting rich.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's a good thing to do. maybe our beta featured authors, come to think of it. All right, let me get into this third book here, Secret Deceit. Now, that looks like it takes place in the White House.
Well, as you noticed in that cover, there's a very ominous cloud hanging over the White House. And Secret Deceit is a chilling political thriller about money and power and the plot to assassinate the President of the United States by a cabal of unscrupulous corporate titans who fear that the president's popular the legislative agenda will cost their industry billions of dollars in unfettered profits. So after the president is in fact assassinated, and there is seemingly very little progress by the FBI into the investigation behind his murder, a young Secret Service agent who was on the president's White House protective detail conducts his own behind-the-scenes investigation into the president's murder and ascertains the dark and appalling truth as to what actually happened in furtherance of this sinister plot. So as the conspiracy begins to unfold, the Secret Service agent places his life in grave danger, and the conspirators take every step imaginable to protect their identity and to take out the Secret Service agent so as he will be unable to expose their role in this diabolical scheme. So Secret Deceit is a disturbing tale about unfettered greed, and again, the depth of human depravity, all in the name of rampant corporate profits and unscrupulous duplicity. So I was just at a breakfast meeting today, and one of the gentlemen who attends has read all three of my books, and he says he likes Secret Deceit the best because it's so topical regarding the corporate influence and the power in the Washington structure. So
I was just going to say, all three of your books run so close to the truth, about what is actually going on, that it's, it could almost be nonfiction. It isn't, it's fiction, but.
I've had numerous people ask me during my presentations, is all of this true? And I say, no, but it could be.
Mm-hmm.
So it runs a very fine line between fiction and reality.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing. D.G. McCool says, Stephen, do you design all your book covers?
Yes, we do. I have I don't personally design it, but I have a friend who's an entrepreneur, and I tell him what I want on the cover, and he can go. Actually, Amazon has a great resource where you can design your cover through their various photographic and artistic displays. So I tell him what I want, and then he'll put something together, and then we keep working at it until we get it the way I want it. And like I just mentioned about Secret Deceit, he did a great job putting that ominous cloud over the White House and the title in a blood red tint. I think it depicts exactly the tone that I wanted to project for this story.
Well, in Fractured Power, too, the Capitol building's fractured along the top. That's,
And when I say it's a dark and haunting thriller, there's a reason why the cover's in black.
Dark. Yeah.
It's dark and haunting.
Yes, it is.
And I like Prior Restraint too. I like the way that that's.
I like that cover too. I think it's unique, and I've been very happy with all the covers.
Bring that one back up again.
Prior Restraint?
Yeah.
Okay.
Was it on purpose that the orange stripe goes across the Liberty's Statue of Liberty's mouth and face?
Well, I think in a manner of speaking, yes. There's always implications to good stories, and it's not all black and white. And when we talk about terrorism in America, that can take a lot of shapes. So when we're blocking out the Statue of Liberty, it's symbolic.
Very symbolic.
Very much.
Yeah. I think that was Rob's point, that's what this book is about, is blocking that kind of freedom. So he wondered if that was on purpose.
Right.
The way the cloud was on purpose over the White House. Well, all three books sound amazing, and I'm looking forward to reading one.
Yeah.
And I was just going to say, and I would really like to hear about what you decide to come up with for your fourth book, what you're going to hit upon, because you've addressed three different issues in each book. Well, like you said, it's hard coming up with a unique idea. And
well, it's funny when you were during one of the commercials depicting George's book, Return. Was it Return? What was the something?
Return of the Jaguar.
I was thinking during the commercial, maybe I'll write something about someone's return to Washington, and it won't be for good purposes. So, kind of gives me a little inkling of an idea.
Oh, that's
I like
good.
the concept of someone returning to the scene of a crime.
Yeah. Yeah, that is that. And I think that's actually what criminals do. They do return to the scene of the crime. That's why that's a trope, is because they actually do it. I know that they do for fire setters, firebugs do that. They like to come and watch the building burn, which is kind of gross.
Yeah, right.
Chris Christmas said, "Scary thought." the return of the return of the criminal to the scene of the crime.
Well, these aren't just criminals. These are extraordinary people. And the fact that they are psychotic or they're of criminal intent just makes their characters that much more interesting. So they're not coming back just to commit petty crimes. But, we'll see.
George Dismuke says, with all the insane statue removals that's gone on recently, I'm surprised some idiot hasn't tried to remove the Statue of Liberty.
Right. It's not right. It's not fair.
I won't comment on that. I think we're entering a brave new world. I think a lot of these horror tales that people are writing about may very soon become more reality than fiction.
I think about that all the time, because back when we were in school, we actually read books like that, like 1984, which I remember thinking, whoa, that's a long way away.
Long way away.
When you read the book, the Manchurian
Candidate. And yes.
And that seemed like that was a great book and a great movie.
Yes.
But that could easily occur in this country.
Yeah.
So, what at one point in time was someone's frolic is now a very real prospect.
Yes, it is. It's very real and very scary. We are living the books we read growing up. We are. Big Brother is watching you. It's like,
that's for sure.
All righty. Double speak. Yep.
Yeah. All the cameras.
All the cameras, everybody, everywhere, watching
In every
everybody.
corner.
I mean, it is, we really are. We're living that. And I remember thinking, that could never happen.
It's not going to happen.
Of course, I was thinking that in the 50s, that couldn't happen.
Well, if you look at 1984 by George Orwell,
Mm-hmm.
he wrote that book in 1944.
I know.
He wasn't that far off.
No. That's the crazy part. You
Right.
know, so many books are prophetic.
Right.
You know, somebody's had this idea and they write them.
We need to do something here. Say goodbye to Atlanta or close down the show.
All right. Goodbye, Atlanta.
All of our listeners in Atlanta, thank you for joining us, and come back next week at 9:00.
There.
Okay, there. We got that out of the way.
Now we can end the show when we need to.
When we're
end
ready
the show.
to.
Is there anything else you would like to talk about before we do sign off on this channel?
I think we've covered it pretty well. If anyone had any more questions, I'm always interested in hearing questions, but I think I got out pretty much what I wanted to say about the books, and hope we've engendered a bit of interest in them. And so I would encourage people to go onto my the website, which you just flashed up, and that gives you a much deeper background into my biography and a short synopsis on all three of the novels. You can also see all the appearances that I've made, and we have a lot of, it's a great website, which again, my wife has been pretty much responsible for.
She's done a good job.
So go on my website, and you can always ask a question or send me an email there, and we try to get back to everyone in a timely fashion.
I've got a question for you.
Wait a minute, one second. I just want to say, for those who are listening who aren't watching, again, his website is StephenMcGuireAuthor.com, and that's Stephen with a PH,
Right.
not a V.
My question for you is, do you miss being in Washington, D.C. and in the middle of all that? Do you miss it at all?
What I miss is the intellectual discourse of other professional individuals. When I was at the FTC, we presided over huge antitrust cases, and I was fortunate to preside over the largest antitrust case in FTC history. We had 74 attorneys involved in that case.
Holy cow.
The three leading attorneys for the government, by happenstance, had all graduated from Harvard Law School, and the three leading attorneys for the respondent had all graduated from Yale. So
that's too much.
Over the course of a 5-month hearing, you can imagine the competitiveness that they had between themselves. But it was just the pinnacle of the legal profession, and I do miss that. And my wife and I had a wonderful 30 plus years in Washington. We kept a boat on the Chesapeake Bay. We had a lake house near Charlottesville in Virginia, and we just did everything you could have done in the Washington area. But I don't miss being in Washington.
I understand that. George DeSmuke says, great show, one of the best in a long time. Go get them, Stephen.
Thank you, George. And then good luck to you.
And Joyce Shelton York says, very relevant and timely subjects in your books.
Thank you.
And And Paula says, great show, Joan, Rob, and Steve. And Paul Rushworth Brown says, hello from Sydney, Australia. Better late than never. Hi, Paul.
Well, I guess he's a few hours
it's morning.
ahead of us. I don't know. Or behind. I don't know.
He's time traveling. It's time morning now.
Yes, he is. We have viewers that often comment and ask questions from Australia. Marjorie Deering says, thanks for another great podcast. Great stuff.
Are we going somewhere?
Chris Griffin says, thanks for another great show. Well, we just said we were.
Oh, I guess we did.
So we're saying good night.
There you go.
And they're thanking you for a great show,
yes.
Stephen. It was really good.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thanks for having me on. I enjoyed it as well.
Very good. I'm going to move you over to the side now. So hold on. There you go. Hope that didn't hurt. And just want to remind everybody to tune in to WDJYFM.com, or if you're in Atlanta, 99.1 FM in Atlanta tomorrow night at 9 o'clock. Episode rewind 5:30 Saturday. And then next week, join us again right here at 7 o'clock Eastern time for a visit with author Laura Vosica. And
Joyce Shelton, New York said, have a great evening, all. Very interesting show. It was very interesting.
It was, and it was fun too.
It was fun. Maybe learn things about Washington we didn't want to know.
There you go. All right. Well, I guess until next time.
That's all, folks. Good night.
Live every Wednesday, your Voice of Indie hosts Beam Weeks and Stephen Gees welcome authors, musicians, publishing industry pros, artists, and assorted creative guests for an exciting interactive hour. Call in during the show or post questions and comments on Twitter for responses in real time. Meet your favorite indie creators, learn inside tips, network, and promote your work. The link for each week's show is pinned on Twitter atop @VoiceOfIndie. And you can receive the link every Wednesday morning in your inbox by subscribing to our newsletter at freshinkgroup.com. Check out Voice of Indie every Wednesday on Blog Talk Radio and catch hundreds of episodes archived everywhere from our websites to our YouTube channel and Spotify.
Thank you for joining us here on Meet the Author. Make sure you stay up to date with our show by clicking like, follow, and share. And you can find us on Spotify, iTunes, and more. See you next time on WLFE-DV.com.